You were one of the first to identify design as important in business. You know, that's widely accepted now, but how much is lip service and how much are businesses really paying attention to it?
I think it's a mix of both. I see some leading businesses really adopting design to make their strategies more creative, their product lineups more compelling. Some obviously are doing the lip service thing, but no, companies like Lego and P&G and Steelcase, I see them doing great things with design.
So you're speaking with Tim Brown, the CEO of IDEO, a famous design firm here in Silicon Valley. Talk about some of the work you're doing with IDEO.
Well, what Tim Brown and I have been trying to do for the last decade is take design away from strictly product design to design of more complicated things, design of business strategy, design of large system change, and I think that's where there's the greatest promise for design. We're really interested in how do you use design principles to create better government policy, for example, how to overcome gridlock in Washington with design. So that's the sort of thing we're working on these days.
When we think about designing products, we usually think about it as a talent, right? An intuitive talent. It's the Johnny Ives of the world that know how to do it. So when you talk about designing strategy, how much is talent and how much is skill that can be learned?
I think it's mainly skill that can be learned. I mean, and I think Johnny Ives and Tim Brown would both say that. They would say, I'm not sure that I'm born a great designer, but I've just worked at it for years and years. It's the 10,000 hours thing. And so I think there are a lot of people who just don't think they're creative, and I don't think there's any non-creative person out there.
So you co-wrote a hit business book with A.G. Lafley recently, yeah. Playing to Win. Maybe talk a little bit about how design thinking around strategy comes into play at a company like Procter & Gamble.
Well, this was a big thrust of AG's. When he took over as CEO first in 2000, he said, we're going to make design a key to our competitive success. And he created a design function, put this wonderful woman, Claudia Kochka, in charge of it. And a lot of the great things they did in that era, like the total revamp of Oil of Olay, turning it from a small, boring business into a $2.5 billion juggernaut. That was all based on these design principles that he brought to the company.
Who are the other success stories when it comes to designing business strategy?
Oh, I really like Lego. I do a bunch of work with Lego. What a great company. And things like the Friends line for girls were, I think, a great kind of product of their thinking about design. Steelcase, the office furniture company, is terrific as well. They're now into designing environments. You know, how do we design the workplace to help foster more productivity and happiness in the workers? Those would be a couple.
So you had a pretty interesting article in the Harvard Business Review recently and talked about kind of fear-based strategy where companies try to predict the future and react. Talk a little bit about the mistakes companies make as they strategize for the future.
Yeah, I think most companies see strategy as an analytical exercise, and it arose out of that world. The early people in strategy were very analytically oriented number crunchers, and I think it's much more of a creative process where if you just take the data from the past and extrapolate it forward, you're not going to do anything interesting.
You're trying to predict the future. It's impossible.
Yeah, that's right. And I actually think you've got to make the future. And I think that, everybody likes Steve Jobs. I liked him too. I mean, he wasn't willing to extrapolate the past. He said, we can make the future. And I think that's where greatness comes for companies, not just accepting whatever the industry is doing, we're going to do that too, but rather than saying, no, here's a future we can create. So you're not just predicting something random, you are actively creating it. And I think design has a whole lot to do with how you can think about designing a future that you'd like your company to go into.